So I guess I'll give you a quick introduction what I'm doing. I started now three blogs ago or 3 posts ago. I started on my birthday, June 15, with studying and researching 39 ideas. It was my 39th birthday. Researching 39 ideas for life that make life better, basically not only for myself, but also for other people. And basically the goal is for me to, dive into something that I'm not necessarily familiar with, research it, and then also to interview someone who knows much more about this topic, and then combine these ideas on my website, 39ideasforlife.com, and I post the interviews on the YouTube channel, and I try to synthesize into some content about it on the blog. So that's basically what I'm doing. And today for the 4th topic, I've been looking into Stoicism, and I came along your book, and I thought I need to talk to this guy. It's been a pleasurable and very good read. I've read your first book, and I started the second, and I thought I'd touch base with you and pick your brain on Stoicism and how it applies in today's day and age.
All right. Well, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that, because when you contacted me, you said you found me and you wanted to talk about Stoicism. You never told me if you enjoyed my book or not, so I'm glad this is starting off on the
Actually,
that it resonated with you.
Yeah, and I hadn't read it before I contacted you. I had listened to some of your content on your podcast, and I thought I like the idea that it's short and practical, and not these long sessions dragging on. So I thought this makes sense, and I thought let me see if you can share some of your wisdom with me and the few people that are reading my content. Yeah. Sure.
First, let's not call it wisdom. It's just haphazard knowledge I've come across that helped me, that I'm sharing with everyone, because it seems to help everyone as well. This is why we're still talking about this stuff after 2,500 years, right?
Yes. Maybe I do a quick introduction, who you are, for people who end up watching this, because to learn about Stoicism, I'm talking to Steven Silver, and you have authored 3 books on Stoicism and Stoic principles and knowledge, and you're the host of Stoicism for a Better Life and the website with the same name. And I think you have worked, and you are still working, to enable others and also yourself to use ancient, like you said, very old Stoic wisdom to live a purposeful and anxiety-free life still in today's day and age. So thanks a lot for being with me here, Anderson. I really appreciate it. Can you tell me, because you said it's just now, it's really ancient and old knowledge. Why is this still relevant today?
This is a great question, and it's actually, the answer is a lot simpler than we'd like to imagine. Why are we still afraid of the same things as we were from thousands of years ago? Why do beasts still scare us? Why do lions still scare us? You know, I'm pretty sure our ancestors 150,000 years ago were still scared of those felines. It's because our bodies are the same. Our bodies have not changed. This vessel that we exist in, you know, as advanced as our consciousness is that second voice within, as rational and intelligent and self-aware as it is, this vessel that it exists in is exactly the same as it was, you know, 3,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. And that's why we're still talking about the exact same thing when we talk about the human condition.
Yeah. That makes sense. As you know, I've read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations in the past, and I've enjoyed some other books on Stoicism here and there, and it has resonated with me very much. But I'm very far from an expert or anyone who knows at least more than a little bit about Stoicism. So my question would be, if you would have to explain the essence of Stoicism to a 7-year-old child, how would you explain it? And I would consider myself probably like a 7-year-old child learning about this now.
You know, that's the best way to explain it to anyone, and this is how I remind it to myself.
Yeah.
We all know we have this duality within. Obviously, this is not the way I would explain to the 7-year-old, but we feel this partition inside of us, this duality. You know, we call it the id and the ego. We call it the, you know, the good and the evil and the whatever. We sense this emotion and anger inside of us, but we also sense this capacity for goodness. You know, like, you know, you hold the door open for someone and you feel so good. So the way I would explain it is to a kid is, you know, that thing when you share something and you feel good inside, that part of you, that's your rational mind. That's the part of you that makes smart decisions, calculates, and thinks without emotions. Stoicism is using that in the present moment as often as possible. That's how I would describe it.
So opening the door, is that the rational mind, or is that just maybe the goodness that we carry within us that wants to come out?
Yeah, so that opens the door to the rational mind, and you know, we have to pick and choose our words very carefully. Anyone who's read my work, my articles or books knows I'm a big critic of the English language. You know, the English language is beautiful. It's given us this capacity to exchange information. Look at you and me. We're sitting on 2 separate continents and just chatting across, you know, half the planet almost. So in that sense, the English language is amazing, but it's so limited in its capacity to transfer information. So we have to be careful when we say, oh, it's the good in us and the bad in us. You hit the nail on the head. It's tapping into that rational mind. It's tapping into that part of you that, as a parent, the example I'll use, you know, when your kid does something so frustrating and you're just like, oh, why? But you kind of take a deep breath, and then you do your parent thing, and then you kind of go to your bedroom and close the door and, you know, yell into a pillow and go, you know. So that mind that's able to do the right thing, even, you know, despite emotions, that's our rational mind. And that's what we try and tap into.
Yeah. So it's about doing the right thing in spite of our emotions, which might tell us many different other things in many cases. Yeah.
Right. And one argument that we make in Stoicism, like our cynic older cousins, if you will, is that we believe in both the goodness and the badness of humanity. Right? We're decrepit despite ourselves, but we all want to be good, and we can be good. And so it's trying to tap into that exactly.
Yeah. At the same time, Stoicism is really also, at least as I interpret it, about what is and seeing it for what it is, instead of putting judgment on it, whether it's being good or bad, because it all depends on where you stand. So how does that relate to this dichotomy of either good or bad in practice?
Great question. And Marcus Aurelius was big on this one. So, you know, we're all drama queens in our own way, right? We live in our own minds. We live in this world where we're the main actor and we have our sidekicks, and, you know, we like to see the world through our own eyes. And as objective as we'd like to think we are, even the most altruistic person, you still can't help but see the world through your own eyes, you know, and that's affected by what you've been taught your whole life, where you grew up, what you saw, right? And so trying to tap into this objectivity, trying to be, you know, remove ourselves and our emotions to be able to see the world for what it is, as opposed to this sucks, or this isn't fair, or this shouldn't you know. For your listeners, I was, you know, my host was kind enough to wait for me. I was late by about 15-20 minutes, but instead of panicking, I just jumped on and said, hey, buddy, here's my situation. Can you be patient for 15? He's like, yeah, sure, let's do this. So I'm sharing the story because an older version of me 10-15 years ago would have just panicked. Anxiety would have kicked in. I would have been like, I'm canceling last minute. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you. Bye. I don't want to think about it anymore. Yeah. Right? We've all been in situations like this where we're just trying to like, I don't want to see it. I can't deal with it anymore. Yeah. So as a Stoic now, it's a very small difference if you think about it, but I was able to just think of a better way to deal with it, despite having that nervous energy, and I did, and I felt terrible. Yeah. But you know, we were able to communicate through it, and look at us, we're having our little talk now. So this is exactly it.
Yeah, yeah. From my side as well, because I was a little bit nervous. For some reason, I'm nervous for all these interviews because I want to make a good impression, I guess. And I don't know, I think about what people think, and I want the content, or I want what we talk about. Content is also like, that's not a good word, but I want what we talk about, meaningful. And then, yeah, no, I was kind of felt like, hey, this is maybe practicing Stoicism, where there's a good opportunity for me to just take a breath and relax. I enjoyed seeing my neighbors with their new puppy dog outside, and I just had a small cup of soup, and it was just, yeah, it was a good moment. And then time flew by, and here we are. So it's been, yeah.
And there you go. A few very simple changes of perspective. And what could have been a terrible situation where you were upset because I canceled last minute and I was upset because I had to cancel last minute.
Yeah.
Instead, things worked out the way they did. And we have this great story to share now with your listeners. So
yeah.
that's why Stoicism is still around. It's simple and it works.
Yeah. So I want to bring it back to this 7-year-old kid.
Yeah.
If you're, so you've explained Stoicism and it started to make sense maybe slightly. What one key Stoic principle or a Stoic lesson would you give this 7-year-old child to take on his path through life growing up?
That's a good question. I'm going to use my own kids as an example because it's hard to give one answer. It would depend on what that person needs at that time. But my own kids, as they were entering when they were around the 7 to 10 year age group, we kept talking about the big voice inside and the little voice, because the big voice inside is the one that gets nervous and starts yelling and gets angry and wants to pick up a stick and hit someone else. And we work a lot on when you feel that big voice take over, you have to take a deep breath and listen to that little guy, because that little guy is the one that can make the right decisions. And don't do anything or say anything until you've heard both sides of the story, because the little guy is the one you're going to be living with later on. Whereas the big guy, he's the visitor. Emotions come and go. Yeah. And, as I go through these experiences with the kids and they see the emotions come and go, they start going, oh, yeah. And they're able to distinguish between the animal primitive mind, right? The loud voice, and the rational intelligent brain, the more the one in equanimity that's able to make rational decisions in an ordinary state of mind without emotions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's a useful way to think about it. So, yeah. So
since you're reading the second book, sorry to interrupt, that's exactly what the second book is about. So I'm glad you said that you're really going to enjoy what's coming.
Yeah. No, I have the feeling already. It's been very good so far. I mean, I'm happy to be able to talk to you here. It's great. Hey, another question, and this is a personal question. I hope you don't mind. Can you share with me and with the people watching, listening to this, what happened to you personally that led you to Stoicism, and what have you learned from it? I mean, we're talking about it obviously already, but how has it transformed your life? Can you say something about that?
Sure. I'll talk about it, and I'm very open about it because I feel like I'm blessed to have found a second life. I don't hide the fact that Stoicism saved my life. It did give me that second lease. So I feel it's my duty to share my story to give others inspiration, especially since my story is a quote unquote success story, which it wasn't. But let me backtrack. So I was born and raised in Montreal, your capitalist, North American capitalist wet dream. I went to, I crushed the grades at school. I got my CPA out of school as an accountant. I got, worked hard, 80-hour weeks, got the job, executive level, 6-figure salary, car, house, kids, dogs, fence, tick, 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 everything done. And I was, even the white fence, it is white too. And I was sitting around one day, appreciating what I've accomplished because I did everything that society told me I should do to be happy. Yeah. And I was miserable. And when I started looking at my life objectively, instead of looking at the driveway and thinking, I'm doing all right, I was like, I keep buying stuff. Why do I keep buying stuff I don't need, right? And that's where I started thinking, okay, because I've made it to the upper echelons of where I'm supposed to make it in this society, I can see now that it's fake. There's no more cliff to climb up on. let me look elsewhere. And that's where I started my own re-education, if you will, because that's what it was. I had to undo my education, which I had been taught for 3 decades, and I had to reteach myself ethics and morality and how to live. Looked at religion didn't work. Looked at philosophy resonated, and then finally ended up with Stoicism out of sheer luck. And here we are today. Stoicism really, really made sense to me.
Yeah, it does. Of all the things you learned while studying Stoicism, what one thing really got you to change, or what was very impactful that started to shift your focus? What was the first big aha moment for you there?
I guess the first big aha moment was recognizing that things just are and things happen. I always, because I grew up learning to compete, when things went bad, it's oh my God, the worst thing, the world is over, like shut down everything. I don't want to live anymore. The mango flavored whatever I want, they don't have anymore at Starbucks. Like that's how I was living. So it was that kind of freedom, that emancipation from what is good based on what is shiny and expensive and different and convenient and luxurious. It was being able to separate from that. And today, it still is the most impactful piece of Stoicism. If you were to ask me the same question in a different way and say, what do you get out of it today the most? I can give a long list of, I'm more patient, I'm more this, I'm a better role model, blah, blah, blah. But to me, I'm able to find peace, happiness, tranquility in the blink of an eye, within a moment, because I'm able to, if I can summarize, a lot of lessons in 30 seconds, we live only in the present moment, right? The past is past, is history. The future is unknown. No matter how much we try to plan for it, we don't know it. Yeah. So it's only in the present moment. And in the present moment, because it really passes from one moment to the next, whether you made good decisions or not in the past, doesn't matter. All I have to do right now to be good is make a good decision right now, no matter how small or big. So anything from, turning off a light switch to throwing myself in front of bullets to save, a family that's being shot at, they're both equally virtuous and good. And as long as I make that decision in this moment, I'm at peace and I'm happy, and it doesn't matter what's happening around me.
Yeah. It's very interesting you say this, because actually my last topic, or my last idea, was how to be present, how to be in the here and now. And probably that's the study of the present moment. It led me to Stoicism, and hence we're talking here now.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. How did this impact your life and your family life? And because you have children, you have a dog, you said. So how did this all affect the way you interact with your surroundings?
It changed it dramatically. It was a significant change, but because of small, it's almost like the example we were using at the beginning of this interview of how, our story right now turned out being a beautiful one that we'll remember, as opposed to like a shameful, canceled interview, because of small decisions. But the end result is huge. So I'm definitely more patient with 3 kids, 2 of them who are entering their teenage years now. That's coming in really handy. My wife could confirm I'm definitely a lot more patient, around the house as well. I'm definitely less ambitious with my projects around the house, right? I don't care if I get everything done in what you do, what you can, and you move on. Yeah. And I'm a lot more present in the moment, meaning in the past, 10 years ago, on a typical weekend, we would start thinking, where do we go? What do we do? Let's do a picnic. We got to get this, buy that, get a cooler full of da. Whereas now we just go with, hey guys, it's nice. We want to just grab a blanket and walk across the street to the park. All right, let's go. Cool. So it's more about us and them, and it's been amazing, especially through this pandemic. I thank the gods. The Stoic training my family and I went through over the past 5-10 years has really come in handy over the past year and a half.
Yeah, to see the world as it is and not for what we judge it to be or what we want it to be.
What we want it to be, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very tricky thing because, yeah, brings me actually to the next question, because from what I dissected from now studying Stoicism in this short and condensed time, there's basically 3 core principles, if I understand it correctly, and that's focusing on what you can control, taking responsibility, and arete, if I pronounce it right, striving for virtue and expressing your highest self in every moment possible. Can you, I mean, we're kind of talking about it, but can you illustrate these 3 concepts with clear examples so we can actually practice them and they become more practical? Because I've been reading quite a lot about them and they come repeated in every summary that they're emerging, but then I'm confusing sometimes, okay, what is that focusing on where you can control, or is that relating to the responsibility? You know, it kind of looks the same. I mean, it makes sense you say about the light switch, turning off the light switch, or jumping in front of bullets. That's like striving for virtue in every moment. Mm-hmm. But those other 2, I'm kind of mixed up sometimes.
Okay, so we can go through them, and you know, for anyone who's going to do Stoic research online, depending on which period of Stoicism you read, you'll see these things coupled in different ways, right? You can see them in the cardinal virtues, you can see them in the axioms of the school, you can see them in, and in the modern times, you know, I've put my own spin on these as well. So I have my own terms, the way I've coupled them. So, excuse me, I'll try and answer all of your questions, and we can start with control. Just guide me through, keep asking questions to guide the conversation in the right direction. So for control is a good one. It's one of the main reasons Stoicism resonated with me, given my past. I'm a control freak. I was taught to grab the bull by the horns, go take life, you know, and tear it a new one type of thing. Mm-hmm. And giving up that control has been very difficult. If not impossible. And I still have not, because I cannot. It's part of my makeup. So what Stoicism has allowed me to do is take a step back and honestly admit to myself, all right, Chief, I know you like to take control of everything, but what can you really do? Okay. Mm-hmm. And then look at what you can influence, because there's a difference between what we can do and what we can influence. Yeah. And then I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, so I'm like, okay, do a SWOT analysis or do a cost benefit. How much work is it going to take you to influence that one thing? Now take that energy and spend it on controlling these few things. Mm-hmm. And that's how I was able to justify to myself, stop trying to control everything, reduce your circle of influence, and just take control of what you can take control of. Hence my 3rd book. I call it Your Dichotomy of Control. Learn how to control your life for an anxiety-free and happy whatever. So Stoicism is not about giving up control. It's about learning where to focus your control.
Yeah. I guess it also relates to your perspective on the COVID situation, where you kind of had to realize, okay, you know what, and maybe with less planning or with finishing less things in a day and realizing, hey, okay, this is still good enough and I did what I could do, instead of feeling bad about not having finished all. Yeah.
Or even when we're going through it, you know, I had a lot of people calling me up saying, Anderson, I lost my job. What can I do? What can I do? Say, what can you do, man? It's a pandemic. You know, the market's been cut back. Okay, yeah. Can you cut back on bills? Is your CV out there? Can you go out, do a cold calls? Like, just focus on what you can do. Yeah. Don't worry about what's happening in the greater picture. Same things when we look at politics around this. It's crazy, especially if you live in North America. It's really easy to get anxious over all these things. But what I remind people is you cannot change what's happening. You can educate yourself, but, you know, to be anxious over what you cannot change is a losing prospect.
Yeah. So that's kind of, it's that big voice that you said that you have in your head with all your fears and your anxieties and your stimuli external. Yep. And then there's that small voice, and you have to listen to that small voice, tune into that small voice, and go by that step by step in the present moment.
Right. And when crisis hits, the reason I call it a small voice is because when things are good, everything is good. It's when crisis hits and you have those emotions take over,
Yeah,
those are the ones that are telling you, no, pick that up and throw it right now.
yeah, yeah. That voice can be rather loud, actually.
Very loud.
Very loud. Yeah.
I
So
call
what
it I call it the annoying roommate.
the annoying roommate. Yeah.
You can't get rid of it.
Yeah. Sometimes you cannot choose them, right?
That's it. You can't get rid of your emotions. You have to accept that they're there. So it's not about ignoring it. It's about saying, looking at it right in the eye and saying, I hear you, but let's agree that doing what you want to is going to make things worse. So let's go with my plan.
Yeah. Actually, I read it in your book where you said that if you want to be tranquil, if you want tranquility, do less things better. And I think it makes a ton of sense. So that's also by tuning down or zooming, I don't know, maybe not zooming in, it's maybe not the right metaphor, but really focusing on doing less better. It makes a lot of sense.
Simplify.
Simplify, yes.
We think we're trying to get more essence out of life because we think its essence is in doing stuff, and it's not the stuff, it's not the number of things, it's the quality, it's not the quantity. So focus on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Don't worry about I would rather spend half a day mowing my lawn and doing it the way I want to without rushing, or making an enjoyable experience out of it. Maybe I notice a bird and I stop and I watch that for a bit. Maybe I don't know. I'd rather do that than rush and do it in 15 minutes to then rush and go to a barbecue somewhere and then rush.
I know all about it. I'd rather do that too. And actually today I felt kind of overwhelmed by all of the things that I need to do. I'm trying to make some sense out of it by making lists and just ticking things off my to-do list. But then actually this afternoon I went for a run on the dike here, and it was a great experience. I ran for a little bit less than an hour, and I came back and I was all relaxed. But then, of course, all my I need to do all these things came back. That voice was there again. So
Yeah.
It's hard to keep this calmness and this tranquility. Any tips you can share?
It's hard, but not impossible. And it's moments like the one you're describing that I use as the proof is in the pudding. Happiness is easy to find. And this we take from our Cynic cousins. Stoics did not invent the concept that happiness is available to everyone and it's simple to have. Yeah. It's simple. And we know this. Nobody has ever walked through a forest or looked up at the sky at a beautiful sunset and been like, man, I'm miserable. Right? No, when you see these things, you're like, life is good. Life is good.
Yeah. All right, so that's what we've been talking about, where to control or where to focus on the things that we can control. Can you give some clear examples on that concept of responsibility and how to take responsibility in a good way?
Sure, and that goes two ways. There's responsibility in the human society, and responsibility for when we make errors, right? So in Stoicism, we see, us animal bodies. We live in this thing called the human society, which is totally fake, but hey, that's where we live, where we have titles and jobs and da-da-da-da-da. But then we also have the human community where we're all connected, where our consciousness is connected, and one that's the greater logos, right? I'm getting into a little bit of theory here. But responsibility, and Marcus Aurelius was big on this one, in the human society. I'm a father, okay? I'm a coach. I have a job. I'm a director of whatever. I have these roles, and I know these roles are kind of superfluous. They don't bring happiness to me directly. They don't bring happiness to the world necessarily directly, but I have to do them because I've committed to them. So one thing that I'm very careful, and it's important to me as well, is that I've thrown myself into Stoicism, and I use all my spare time to share this information with everyone. However, I do not compromise my roles in the human society to do this. Yeah. That's one. That's very important. Okay. Yeah. The other side is taking responsibility for errors, and when we get into discussion about ethics and morality, In philosophy, there's, excuse me, I'm gonna get a little sip of water here.
Sure, sure.
In philosophy, if it lets me speak, we have three different categories when we talk about ethics. There is the ontology, right? And then there's utilitarianism or consequentialism. Then there's virtue ethics. Stoicism, the philosophy of Stoicism in itself is a form of virtue ethic, meaning there's no one rule to guide you on how to make a right or wrong decision. Okay, religion, everything is in the book. You do what the book says, and you're a good person.
Yeah.
Utilitarianism is all your decisions have to bring out good at the end. Something good has to come out of it. Okay. Us, we say there are some rules. In some cases, no rules. You have to figure it out. Okay. In every present moment, when something happens, the responsibility is on you to look at all the information that is available and make the possible. Right, and look at it as objectively as possible and make the most rational decision. Once you make that decision, you have to own that, good or bad, right? Yeah. If it goes bad later on, well, that's fine. You cannot be upset and you should not feel guilty because you did your best, right? Yeah. And this is how we can detach ourselves from guilt. As long as you're honest to God, do your best in the present moment, you can forgive yourself for anything because I did my best. I learned from my mistake. We move on. So, I know I'm touching on a lot here, but responsibility, it does cover a lot of angles here. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does raise another question, because what if indeed you have done everything, or you have thought you've done everything, and then you make a decision and the consequence is not good? Mm-hmm. I mean, what I would have in those moments, probably this is the big voice maybe coming up, but I would think like, but maybe I didn't do everything, or maybe I should have thought about X, Y, Z, and I didn't. How to deal with that? I mean, it's right. In theory, I hear what you're saying, but in practice, I know that my big voice will come with these arguments that, no, Julius, you've been slacking there,
Exactly, and that's where the little voice has to come back with, no, we did do our due diligence. We looked at everything. So what helps here, in Stoicism, when we talk about meditation, and we meditate a lot, we speak of our journal. It's journaling. And the reason journaling is meditation for us is because you cannot take a pen and write down on a piece of paper without triggering your rational mind, right? You can draw with muscle memory, you can type with muscle memory, but you can't write with muscle memory. So if you make these decisions, okay, use it in your journal. Not only are you using your rational mind, and not only are you putting everything on paper so you can look at it tomorrow objectively or more objectively, mm-hmm. but also you've documented all of this. So later on, if you just so happen to not trust yourself and go, maybe I didn't do my best, you can go back and see, empirically that you did your best. Hey, are there lessons to be learned? Always. Can you make all the right decisions? Never. These are all facts we have to accept. Yeah,
that's a good point, actually. I like that you touch upon the journaling. I know, actually, it's a topic that might be one of the ideas I'll research in the coming 9 days, or not the next one, but in one of the remaining ideas for the 39 ideas in total. Another one is the simplicity, but the journaling, can you share your own journaling practice? Is that like a daily thing that you do? I know that Marcus Aurelius, every evening in the end of the day, he reflected on his day, he reflected on his decisions, and he was always journaling. I started, and I did this in the past, not necessarily inspired by him per se, but just by being able to reflect on my day. And what I did is I wrote about all the meetings I had. And what I learned while doing that, there was so many new insights that I got from just reflecting on those meetings. And it was a very useful thing. However, then there's only 24 hours a day, and how to make this a priority, and how do you do it?
Um, you're gonna love my next book. It's all about journaling.
Is it?
Because journaling is so important. Everywhere I go, my pocket journal is with me, and it's kind of like my thing. You know, everyone's like, "Hey, that's Aaron's journal." It's everywhere I go. Anderson's journal follows him everywhere. Um, Now, how do I use it? Oh boy, I use it in 7 different ways. I use it to revalidate my day, or go through my day to see, okay, where did I do wrong? Where did I do good? What could I have done differently, right? I can use my journal to do premeditatio malorum, which is if I have like a tough meeting coming up, or I know something, a tough weekend because I have that, uncle coming into town that, always gives me a hard time. I can start writing about what potentially could happen, what kind of feelings I might feel, and how I wish I would react, using my rational mind now, to give my little voice a script to follow when the emotions come banging. So these are the type of things I can use my journal for. I also use it as a gratitude journal. This is very important because the machine, the biosuit we exist in, one of its survival mechanisms is pessimism. Pessimism, and I don't know if you got to that part yet in the second book. I give an anthropological background as to where and why anxiety and pessimism exists, because I want the reader to understand this is normal, you guys. It's okay. It's actually a survival mechanism. We don't need it anymore today, so let's figure out how to get around it, but let's not panic and think we're broken. No, it actually means you're working fine.
Yeah.
Because we're so pessimistic, we tend to think negative, negative, negative. A gratitude journal is a great way to counterbalance that. And gratitude for anything, man. The roads I'm driving on. Have you ever been thankful for the road you're driving on? Think of the people, right? And how great did that feel? And every day you drive over that road and you've never thought of it, yet all of a sudden when you start reflecting on the guys digging and the asphalt being poured, you're like, wow, what a cool way to connect with people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you can take that much further. It's true. Gratitude is a huge thing. Yeah.
So I use the journal for decision making when I have tough decisions to make sure I, not just document it, but really to make sure I cover all bases as much as I can, because I know I'm still as objective as I try to be. So no, the journal I use often. Usually, it used to be very disciplined at night, and then in the morning. But now that I've gotten in the discipline, I just write anytime. Like I have no problem pulling up my journal mid-conversation to write. And people expect this from me now because what could be more important? Name me one other thing that's more important to me than my mental well-being. Because if this is well, then it's going to take care of my body well. Then those two together are going to be able to take care of everybody else around me well. Yeah. If I ignore myself, it's short term. I'm punishing everybody in the long term. Yeah. So we got a journal.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's true. If we don't take care of the mind, we cannot take care of the body, and then with those two, we cannot take care of the people around us. It's right. It's like in the airplane, we have to put our own mask on first before we can help other people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let me come back to the last core principle, arete, which is the life of virtue in every moment. We've already touched on virtue with regard to responsibility, and kind of, so these also kind of link in together. Can you give, I guess the example was the light switch or jumping in front of the bullets when you could save one or more people. Are there other clear examples on how we can continuously live this life of higher virtue?
Yeah, and I laugh because my answer is going to be so underwhelming. And maybe it's the reason Stoicism still works, because it really is so simple. We expect something great out of it. So to answer this question is what we spoke about at the beginning when you asked me what Stoicism is. It's about using your rational mind in the moment to make a decision in the present moment. That's it. And that's what virtue is to us. And so the practice of this in every continuous moment, one after the other,
is being,
That's life.
yeah.
That's it. So it's underwhelming, but when you go back to the stories we shared about even how we set up this interview, how a very simple decision, just because of a different paradigm, changed the outcome completely, then you get to, you know, one understands and begins to see how you can change your life really one moment at a time.
By changing how we judge things and how we perceive them. Yeah.
With one decision at a time. And that's the other thing, you know, you don't feel this burden of having to do like a tape off of your arm in one shot. It's not all or nothing. The beauty of it is actually we can never get to the horizon.
No, and you can fail and just start again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. In your book, your user's manual, you speak of bad coding. And I really like this. It's in relation to automated response system that we have learned through past experiences and memories of past events. And this limits our ability for one, to be in the present moment, but obviously also two, to be objective. Can you explain more or talk a little bit more about bad coding and how we can kind of stay away from it as much as possible, or how we can maybe disconnect ourselves from these bad coding as much as possible?
Right. So the bad coding for your listeners, you know, we're talking about emotions. Emotions are, again, they're a defense mechanism of the body, and they're a survival mechanism, right? Why do we have this feeling of love and attraction? Is because, you know, propagation of the species, and we want to stay in groups, and so, you know, safety in numbers and all this stuff. All our emotions, there's a reason they exist. I love Eastern philosophy as well. And if, you know, for those of you who read my books, I talk a lot about Buddhism as well. But one part of Buddhism that doesn't work for me is they kind of ignore the body and they just focus on the higher mind, and the body's just like, whatever. To me, that doesn't work because, hello guys, this is me. Like, I can see it. I have to do something with this too. And this is where Stoicism kind of bridges the gap between the two. Excuse me.
I'm asking you about the coding, the bad coding.
Right. Yeah. So to get back to the emotions, the body comes with this bad coding that helped it survive these years. But we don't need this anymore in modern society because of the social contract. Because of, I mean, you know, we're so peaceful now. There's no more famine. There's no more, you know. It's going to be bad to say, but for the most part, plagues and pandemics are no longer, you know, swiping across the world and killing us. So when an emotion hits us, our immediate reaction is a if then therefore statement in our brains, right? So I use the driving cars as an example. Someone cuts you off, and your emotions go, if someone cuts you off, then he is jerk driver, therefore flip him the bird on the road because you're angry, right? This is your instinct because it's your fight or flight response. Yes. This is bad coding that we don't need today. So this is that big voice we have to learn to kind of ignore and get past in our decision making. Mm-hmm. It's okay to feel it, is my point. But we have to understand that it's broken coding that's no longer applicable to today's modern world and society. So we have to make decisions without it.
Mm-hmm. I guess that comes down to being in the present again as much as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that kind of triggered me, or I appreciated reading about them, was the principles of amor fati and memento mori, love faith and remember death. Can you tell me, Anderson, why should we learn to love faith and remember death continuously?
Love faith because we can't control the world, right? We spoke about this a little bit. Things happen, and even as soon as we perceive it, okay, it's already in the past, right? We all know how the brain works, how the irises work. When an event happens, it's already done. It's in the past. It's not something that was done to us. It's not something that was done against us or despite it, whatever. So, you know, let's just accept it and move on. It's a simple data point that we use in our decision making. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's when we start thinking that this is unfair why did this happen? Why couldn't this have happened another way? That's when we get into problems. That's when we get into trouble.
Yeah.
And just very quickly, whenever we say, I wish something happened differently, that statement, if we think about it, if we break it down logically, what we're saying is, I wish there was a hypothetical new parallel reality where things happened that are more convenient for me, and that was the reality I happen to exist in. Like, it's just ludicrous to wish for another alternative. So no, things happened. It is what it is. Let's make the best decision we can and move on. That's generally amor fati.
Yeah. And then memento mori.
So memento mori is the bigger one. We hold memento mori very close to heart, not because we have a dark sense of humor, but because it's at the core of our philosophy. Okay. First reason memento mori is important is because, we tend to fear death. We all do. Okay. When we're young, we don't think about it. Then we have the midlife crisis. Then you get old and you start like, oh boy, time is running out. But reality is we're dying every day, right? But anyway, so not fearing one's death, like like the samurai code, that they were very stoic in their way. That's one reason for memento mori. Don't fear death. The bigger part is to remember we can go at any time, and if you can die at any moment, and if you can accept this, like really live by this, then every moment is going to become beautiful, no matter how bad, no matter how decrepit or difficult. Every moment becomes beautiful, because it's no longer whether the glass is half empty or whether the glass is half full. We're thankful to have a glass. Doesn't matter what's happening. Yeah. And so memento mori is a constant reminder that this might be my last conversation. When I kiss my kids goodnight, that might be the last time. Everything I do might be literally the last time, and one day it will be the last time. So why the heck wouldn't I do my best right now while I'm doing it?
In the present moment, again.
Exactly.
The here and now. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, another thing related to this, I read yesterday in your book, and it was about the 3 billion heartbeats that we have as human beings. And I was actually sitting here on my balcony when I read it, and I was like, 3 billion heartbeats. Actually, on Saturday, I was biking on this small mountain, and then because I'm doing some bike training, and then I later sent my data for my Garmin watch. I sent it to my friend who's also biking, and he said, "Oh, you just had a Sunday ride, because your heartbeat was only 165." And then I was sitting here thinking, oh, 165, it should be lower. I have only 3 billion heartbeats. I'm close to dying. But yeah, it's true. I mean, we have to live life in the here and now, and it can be over at any moment. And indeed, what better way to spend it than to have, or to do our best in this moment to the maximum of our capacities with, as you say, the small voice instead of the big voice controlling our decisions and our actions.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
We tend to always fight for other people's recognition and accolades and all that. But I quote Atticus from How to Kill a Mockingbird, or To Kill a Mockingbird. He says, before I live with anybody else, I have to live with myself.
Yeah.
And I remind that to my kids and myself all the time. Before I even ask anybody else what they think about me,
yeah,
I have to think about me. And so, that drives me to stay the course, if you will.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in the end, also, nobody really cares. Obviously, our loved ones and family, they care to some extent, but they're also very much focused on themselves. I mean, this is a human condition. Yeah.
In 3 generations, you will be forgotten, no matter what you accomplish.
Yeah, probably true. Yeah, if you don't be careful, maybe even earlier. Yeah. Hey, in your book, you write, don't get upset about the way things are, just go the way things are. Then everything is your way. And this is in line with everything we talked about. And in theory, I mean, it sounds great. And when I'm feeling all tranquil and all relaxed and I read it, I say, yeah, of course, it makes a ton of sense. But today I've spoken to actually a lot of my friends and loved ones in Myanmar. I've lived in Myanmar for 6 years, and I've just come back to Holland, actually only in April. And yeah, I've lived there for 6 years, and hearing now about the hardship, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened there. Since February 1st, there's been a military coup, and they have been denying access to healthcare. There's no oxygen for COVID-19 treatment, so it's like a horrendous, awful situation. And then I'm hearing about passing of family and loved ones, and it's a terrible situation. And then to think about all these things that I've been reading about and studying about, I mean, I know that it's true, but it's easy to forget in a context like that. I guess maybe I should answer the question myself, Ray. It's probably this big voice that's taking over in my head and starts to say all these loud things because I feel that, yeah, it's
You see, you're a Stoic already.
perhaps. But my question would be, like, in the midst of that, how can we learn to keep cultivating the presence and the ability to see things into perspective? And what practical things could you recommend, even for my friends in Myanmar who are facing this situation there now? Because, I mean, it's not a good situation at all.
Yeah. And, you know, back when these philosophies were being written in ancient Greece, it was a similar situation. You never knew when a new emperor with a new army is going to walk into your city and be like, we're the rulers now. Now you bow to us, you know. So this was for people trying to figure out how to live with this kind of uncertainty. And the answer, again, is simple and underwhelming. It's to remind ourselves, well, we can't fix that. It's horrible, what's happening in Myanmar. It's horrible what's happening in Palestine. But, you know, we can't go there and just walk in the middle and say, okay, everyone stop. Are we done? We're done. I can't do that. Yeah. So what can I do? Well, I can first make sure I come back to my ordinary mind, meaning my emotionless mind, as quickly as possible. And that's priority number one, because nothing else matters until I am emotionless. If I'm not able to make rational decisions, I might as well lock myself into a closet, right? Yeah. And then number two is what can I do tangibly? Well, we can have conversations, not shouting matches, but conversations. Yeah. To have a conversation, you have to find somebody else that's willing to converse, right? Not argue. And then you can exchange facts. So I can start accumulating facts. This is something I can do. I can do research, and then I can be ready to have conversations with people. I can also prepare myself to avoid shouting matches, because there are people out there trying to politicize everything, and I can protect myself against this. I can continue to talk to myself in my journal to make sure that my decision-making remains on the straight and true as far as my morality is concerned. So they're all little things individually, but with big impacts.
Yeah. Again, it comes down to focusing on what you can control, narrowing that circle of control, taking responsibility where you can for what you can, and living with the highest virtue by being a rational being as much as you can in the here and now, in the present moment.
That's it. It's attainable, right? Yeah. It's realistic, and it doesn't take any kind of blind faith. This is why Stoicism works for me. It makes sense. I can understand it all, and it's attainable objectives I can accomplish. So I'm happy.
Yeah, you're on board. Yeah. I have a question about emotions, because you said that, or Stoicism says, maybe better than only you, that it's not good to have these emotions. Actually, last week, or 9 days ago, let's say, I had an interview with Faye Mendel, and she has developed a self-powerment model. And basically, the self-powerment model identifies the 3 core emotions: anxiety, frustration, and sadness. And then it can help us come back to the present moment by identifying the emotion that we're experiencing. And typically, because we're not taught to experience our emotions, we disperse them in our thoughts by coupling it with thoughts. So we have all these thoughts, for instance, about the future, about the stress that we have, about the things we have to complete, and then we have to identify, okay, that's anxiety. Let me feel anxiety in the body, and through that come into the present moment. How does that relate to Stoicism and this notion of not feeling emotions or not being led by emotions? What about experiencing these emotions? Because in my experience, actually, it has been liberating when I can, same with grief or with loss, if I allow myself to experience that feeling, I can move through it and become free from it. So how does that relate to the thought or the mindset, if you will, of Stoicism in relation to emotions? Can you say a few things about that?
Sure, it's actually right in line. It's exactly what we do, right? Stay in the present. Don't ignore your objective reality. And part of your objective reality is that you're feeling that emotion, right? Okay. That's part of your externals. Yeah. And then look at it in the eye. Don't ignore it, right? Again, like a Buddhist mantra is more, emotions are like water off a duck's back. I can't do that, right? I take it to heart. And what works for me instead is to look inwards, literally have a conversation with my body's mind and say, yeah, I hear you. You're angry and I get it. Like, you're right. But let's just be rational here. If we do what you want to do, it's not going to go well. So let's agree to, yeah, we're both angry, but let's do this. Okay.
So it's not to say that there's no emotions or we shouldn't feel any emotions, actually experiencing them and then in spite of it or with it, make the rational decision and listen to the small voice.
Bravery is not the lack of fear. Bravery is the capacity to do what's right, despite fear, in the face of fear. So being rational is not being emotionless. You know, being virtuous is the capacity to be rational while emotional.
Yeah. It's been really great, Anderson. I very much appreciate it. And I have to say that I was overwhelmed by reading all these different perspectives, and like you said, the different ages and the different thinkers in it, and you really helped me make quite a lot of sense and to dissect it into something that's simple and attainable. So I really appreciate it. I have one last question, if it's okay to ask you. I'd like to ask this question, maybe a little bit difficult question, but is there anything that I should have asked about Stoicism that I didn't ask? What you think that would be an important question to ask, which I haven't asked?
You know, an interesting point that comes up often is how I'm able to keep living, because I still have my job. I'm still working in an office, how I'm able to keep the capitalist lifestyle and still live a peaceful, tranquil life. And again, I guess that's where Stoicism made sense to me. Marcus Aurelius, right? He was the emperor. Yeah. He was the emperor of the most powerful country, in the Western world, empire. Seneca. He was filthy rich. Have you heard of these books? Letters from a Stoic.
Yes.
The moral letters of a Stoic. This is literally letters from one of the richest guys in all of Rome to one of his other rich buddies, whining about how he's going to lose his fortune in court because tax evasion. Like, this is literally what those letters are about. Mm-hmm. But the lessons there within is what's great, and that's what makes me feel like, hey, I can do this too. Look, the guy that's teaching it to me, he's just as bad as me. Like, he admits it. He's just as described. I can do this too. And I guess that's one message that's important for people nowadays. We've been conditioned to work, buy, money. Stoicism works in parallel with that. You don't have to have a drastic change in life. I have I mentor people. I have Christian followers, Muslim followers. I have atheist followers who I mentor. Stoicism works in parallel with any belief system you have if you need that. But for someone like me who used to be atheist, who I no longer consider myself atheist, Stoicism is something that just makes sense and works.
Yeah, it does. It does. Definitely from a rational perspective, it does. Hey, I want to thank you, Anderson, for this great time.
This was fun.
Definitely worth the wait, and I learned a lot, and I really appreciate it. I'll continue to enjoy your second and also your third book, and any other if you're working on anything else. But
Sure.
Yeah, it's been great, and I would love to stay in touch.
Let's do it. After you read the books, you can grill me on some ideas you don't like.